The train whistle pierced the morning air as Katherine Zimmerman clutched her swollen belly, her breath coming in short gasps as she stumbled onto the wooden platform of Silver Creek Depot. The dust from the departing train hadn't even settled when she spotted them, three men in long coats with hard eyes scanning the platform, their gazes locking on her like predators finding wounded prey. It was May of 1878, and Katherine was 5 months pregnant with nowhere left to run. The depot stood at the edge of the Montana Territory, a remote outpost where the railway met the wilderness. She had hoped to lose herself in the West, but her past had followed her like a persistent shadow. There she is. The tallest of the three men pointed, his voice carrying across the nearly empty platform. "Mrs. Zimmerman, your brother-in-law sends his regards." Katherine's heart hammered in her chest. These weren't lawmen, they were hired guns sent by Victor, her deceased husband's brother, determined to claim what he believed was rightfully his, her unborn child and the fortune that came with it. The station was emptying quickly, the few passengers who disembarked already heading toward the small settlement visible beyond the depot. Katherine backed away, one hand protectively covering her belly, the other gripping her small carpet bag. Her wedding band gleamed in the morning sun, a bitter reminder of promises broken. "Please," she called out, her voice shaking, "I have nothing of value." The leader laughed, a hollow sound that chilled her blood. "Nothing except a Zimmerman heir and the controlling interest in the family mine that comes with it." They approached slowly, spreading out to cut off her escape routes. Katherine's back pressed against the rough wooden wall of the depot building. She glanced desperately toward the settlement, but help seemed impossibly far away. "The child is mine," she said fiercely, lifting her chin despite her terror. "Victor has no claim." "Courts might disagree, madam," said the second man, touching the brim of his hat with mock politeness. "Especially with your reputation." The third man reached for her arm and Katherine swung her bag, striking him across the face. He stumbled back with a curse, his hand flying to his cheek. "Now that wasn't ladylike," the leader growled, reaching for her. The crack of a gunshot froze them all. "I wouldn't do that if I were you, gentlemen." The voice was deep and steady, commanding attention without shouting. Katherine turned to see a tall figure on horseback at the edge of the platform, the sun at his back casting his face in shadow. All she could make out was the distinctive shape of a cowboy hat and the glint of a raised revolver. The leader of the three men turned slowly. "This ain't your business, mister. A woman in trouble is everyone's business where I come from." The stranger urged his horse closer, and Katherine could now see him clearly, a broad-shouldered man with sun-bronzed skin, sharp blue eyes beneath the brim of his hat, and a jawline dusted with stubble. He wore simple trail clothes, dusty from the road, but the way he handled his horse and gun spoke of experience and confidence. "The name's Gabriel Everett," he said, his eyes never leaving the three men as he positioned himself between them and Katherine. "And I'm making this my business." "There's 3 of us, Cowboy," the leader said, his hand hovering near his holster. Gabriel nodded thoughtfully. "I count 3 bullets in my gun, too. Funny how that works out." Katherine could see the calculation in the men's eyes as they assessed their chances. Gabriel shifted his horse closer to her. "Madam," he said quietly, extending his hand, "if you'd be so kind." Without hesitation, Katherine reached for him. With one swift motion, Gabriel leaned down and swept her up, settling her in front of him on the saddle. She gasped as his strong arm wrapped securely around her waist, the solid warmth of his chest against her back, bringing an unexpected sense of safety. The leader's face contorted with rage, and his hand dropped to his gun. Gabriel's reaction was immediate. He fired, the bullet striking the wooden platform near the man's feet. Next one won't miss, Gabriel promised, his voice calm but carrying absolute conviction. The three men hesitated, and Gabriel seized the moment, wheeling his horse around. As they galloped away from the depot, Katherine heard another shot ring out behind them. Gabriel's body tensed, and he fired back twice over his shoulder without slowing down. "Hold on tight," he instructed, and Katherine clutched the saddle horn as they raced away from the depot, the sound of hooves thundering on the packed dirt road. They rode hard for several minutes before Gabriel eased their pace, guiding the horse off the main trail and into the shelter of a stand of cottonwoods along a creek. "Are you hurt, madam?" he asked, helping her down carefully. Katherine shook her head, trying to catch her breath. "No, We're fine." She placed a protective hand on her belly again. "Thank you, you saved our lives." Gabriel dismounted, keeping a watchful eye on the trail behind them. "Those men will be coming after us. Friends of yours?" A hint of a smile softened the question. "Hardly," Katherine replied. "They work for my brother-in-law. My husband died 3 months ago, and Victor, my brother-in-law, is determined to get his hands on the family fortune. The problem is, most of it is tied up in a trust for any children Charles and I might have." She looked down at her rounded belly. "This child is the heir to everything." Understanding dawned in Gabriel's eyes. "So he wants custody. Or worse," Katherine whispered. "I've heard rumors that Victor has debts, gambling debts. He's desperate. If something were to happen to me after the baby is born." Gabriel's expression darkened. "No one's going to hurt you or your child, Mrs. Zimmerman. Katherine Zimmerman. But please call me Katherine." "Katherine," he repeated, and something about the way her name sounded in his deep voice made her heart flutter despite their dire circumstances. "I have a cabin about 3 hours' ride from here. It's remote, secure. We can go there while we figure out what to do next." Katherine hesitated, studying his face. She had just met this man, and yet there was something in his steady gaze that inspired trust. "Why are you helping me?" Gabriel led his horse to the creek to drink, considering her question. "My ma raised me to believe that you don't look the other way when someone needs help, especially not." His eyes flickered briefly to her belly. "A pregnant woman," Katherine supplied with a small smile. "A pregnant woman being cornered by 3 armed men," Gabriel corrected. "That's not a fair fight in any territory." Katherine laughed despite herself, a brief release of tension. "No, I suppose not." Gabriel offered her his canteen. "Besides," he added quietly as she drank, "I know what it's like to be hunted." Before Katherine could ask what he meant, Gabriel stiffened, his hand moving to his revolver. He signaled for silence, listening intently. In the distance, they could hear the sound of hoofbeats. "They're following our trail," he whispered. "We need to move." He helped Katherine back onto his horse, then led the animal through the creek, walking alongside to avoid leaving tracks. They traveled this way for nearly half a mile before Gabriel felt it was safe to mount up behind her again. "My cabin is near the foothills," he explained as they rode. "It's part of a small ranch I've been building. Nothing fancy, but it's sturdy and hard to find if you don't know it's there." Katherine nodded, acutely aware of his arms around her as he held the reins. Despite her exhaustion and fear, she found herself studying his hands strong, calloused from work, but gentle in how they supported her. "What brought you to Silver Creek Depot today, Mr. Everett?" she asked. "Gabriel," he corrected. "I was picking up supplies and mail." "Wasn't planning on rescuing anyone, but plans change." There was a warmth in his voice that eased some of her anxiety. "You often rescue strangers, only the ones who look like they are worth saving." There was a teasing note in his voice now. Katherine smiled, then winced as the baby kicked particularly hard. Gabriel's arm tightened slightly around her. "Everything all right?" "Yes," she assured him. The baby's just restless. It's been a rather exciting morning." They rode in companionable silence for a while, the landscape changing gradually as they moved away from the plains and toward more rugged terrain. Stands of pine trees began to appear more frequently, and the air grew cooler. "Are you from back east?" Gabriel asked eventually. "Philadelphia," Katherine confirmed. "My husband was in mining and banking. We were comfortable." The word felt hollow. Their wealth had brought her no comfort in her marriage, only isolation. And now, Katherine sighed. "Now I have nothing but what's in that carpetbag we left behind and whatever money I managed to sew into my petticoats, and this child." She placed her hand on her belly again. "The most important thing." Gabriel was quiet for a moment. "Family is what matters," he finally said, "not things." The simple statement resonated with Katherine, bringing unexpected tears to her eyes. She blinked them away quickly. She had done enough crying in the months since Charles' death. As the sun climbed higher, the day grew warmer. Gabriel stopped periodically to rest his horse and check that they weren't being followed. During one such stop, he produced a packet of jerky and dried fruit from his saddlebag, offering it to Katherine. "It's not fancy, but it'll keep your strength up," he said. Katherine accepted gratefully, suddenly aware of how hungry she was. "How much further to your cabin?" "Another hour or so," Gabriel replied, scanning the horizon. "We're taking a roundabout way to make sure we're not being tracked." As they prepared to mount up again, Katherine paused. "Gabriel," she said hesitantly, "I don't know how I can repay you for this." He looked at her directly then, his blue eyes serious. "You don't owe me anything, Katherine, but I'd be obliged if you'd tell me more about these men who are after you. If we're going to keep you safe, I need to know what we're dealing with." Katherine nodded, and once they were riding again, she explained everything: how she had married Charles Zimmerman at her parents' urging, despite his reputation as a cold and controlling man. How his death from a heart condition had left her pregnant and vulnerable, and how his brother Victor had begun a campaign to discredit her and claim guardianship of her unborn child. "The courts wouldn't have sided with him in Philadelphia," she continued, "but I discovered he was planning something more direct. My maid overheard him speaking with those men, planning to have me committed to an asylum until after the baby was born, claiming grief had made me unstable." Gabriel's arm tightened protectively around her waist. "So you ran?" "I had to," Katherine said simply. "For my child." "You're a brave woman, Katherine Zimmerman." She shook her head. "I'm just a mother protecting her baby." They crested a small rise and Gabriel reined in his horse. Below them stretched a small valley, sheltered on three sides by forested slopes. A creek wound through the center, and near it stood a log cabin with a small barn and corral beside it. Smoke curled lazily from the stone chimney. "Home," Gabriel said. Katherine's relief at seeing the cabin was tempered by concern. "There's smoke. Is someone there?" "That would be Hank," Gabriel explained. "He helps me with the ranch. Former Buffalo soldier, best man I know. He'll have seen us coming." Sure enough, as they approached the cabin, the door opened, and a tall black man with graying hair at his temples stepped out, a rifle held casually in one hand. "You've brought company, Gabe," he called, his eyes taking in Katherine's condition immediately. "Trouble followed her," Gabriel replied as they reached the yard. "Might follow us too." Hank nodded once, understanding, passing between the two men without further explanation. He set his rifle aside to help Katherine down from the horse. "Madam," he said respectfully. "Hank Wilson. Any friend of Gabe's is welcome here." "Katherine Zimmerman," she replied, grateful for his steady hands as her legs wobbled beneath her after the long ride. "Mrs. Zimmerman needs rest and food," Gabriel said, dismounting. "And we need to keep watch. 3 men from the depot might be tracking us." Hank's expression hardened. "I'll take first watch from the ridge." He looked at Katherine again. "Don't you worry, madam. Nobody finds this place unless we want them to." Inside, the cabin was simple but clean and well-maintained. A central room served as kitchen and living area, with a stone fireplace along one wall. 2 doors led to what Katherine assumed were bedrooms. "It's not what you're used to," Gabriel said, watching her take in her surroundings, "but it's secure." "It's perfect," Katherine replied honestly. After weeks of running, sleeping in cheap hotels and on trains, the cabin seemed like a sanctuary. Gabriel showed her to the smaller of the 2 bedrooms. "You can rest here. I'll bring you some water to wash up." The room held a narrow bed with a patchwork quilt, a small chest of drawers and hooks on the wall for hanging clothes. A window looked out toward the creek and mountains beyond. Gabriel returned with a pitcher of water and a basin. "There's stew cooking," he said. "Hank started it before we arrived. He's a better cook than I am, though don't tell him I admitted it." Katherine smiled. "Thank you for everything." Gabriel nodded, looking slightly uncomfortable with her gratitude. "Rest while you can. We'll talk more over supper." Left alone, Katherine sank onto the bed, the exhaustion of the day finally catching up to her. She washed her face and hands, then lay down, intending only to close her eyes for a moment. Instead, she fell into a deep sleep, her body curled protectively around her unborn child. She woke to the sound of men's voices, Gabriel and Hank talking quietly in the main room. The quality of light through the window told her several hours had passed. The baby stirred within her, and she placed a soothing hand on her belly. "It's all right," she whispered. "We're safe now." When Katherine emerged from the bedroom, both men stood respectfully. Gabriel pulled out a chair for her at the rough-hewn table where 3 bowls of stew were waiting. "Hope you don't mind venison," Hank said. "Game's plentiful up here." "It smells wonderful," Katherine assured him. "I'm famished." As they ate, Gabriel explained that Hank had ridden partway back towards Silver Creek and found no sign of pursuit yet. "Doesn't mean they've given up," he cautioned. "Just means they've lost our trail for now. We'll need to be vigilant." Katherine nodded, her earlier relief tempered by the reality of their situation. "I can't stay here indefinitely," she said. "I won't put you both in danger." "Where were you heading?" Gabriel asked. "San Francisco," Katherine replied. "I have a childhood friend there who married a doctor. She offered me sanctuary until after the baby is born. After that." She trailed off, the uncertainty of her future suddenly overwhelming. Hank and Gabriel exchanged glances. "San Francisco is still a good plan," Gabriel said carefully, "but not right away. Those men will be watching the trains and stage coaches. Better to lay low for a while, let them think you've gone in another direction." "You're welcome to stay here," Hank added. "We've weathered worse storms." Katherine looked between the 2 men, overwhelmed by their kindness to a stranger. "Why would you risk so much for someone you don't even know?" Hank smiled slightly. "Gabe has a habit of collecting strays. Found me half dead after some raiders attacked my unit. Dragged me back to health when most white men would have left me to die." Gabriel looked uncomfortable. "Hank exaggerates." "I don't," Hank replied firmly. "And now he's brought you here because that's the kind of man he is." He stood, collecting their empty bowls. "I'll take first watch tonight. You 2 should talk about what comes next." After Hank left to take up his position on the ridge, Katherine and Gabriel sat in companionable silence before the fire. Katherine found herself studying him covertly, the strong profile, the way the firelight played across his features, the careful way he cleaned his revolver, hands moving with practiced efficiency. "You said earlier you know what it's like to be hunted," she ventured finally. "What did you mean?" Gabriel's hands stilled momentarily before continuing their work. "That's a long story. "We seem to have time," Katherine replied gently. Gabriel set the gun aside and leaned back in his chair. "I was a Union soldier," he began. "After the war, I drifted west like a lot of men. Ended up riding with a marshal for a while, hunting outlaws." He paused, his gaze fixed on the fire. "There was a gang we were after, the Sutton brothers. Bad men. We tracked them for months." Katherine waited, sensing there was more. "We finally cornered them in a small town in Colorado. Things went wrong. Marshall was killed along with 2 townspeople. I got the younger Sutton brother, but Elias Sutton escaped." His voice hardened. "He swore he'd see me dead for killing his brother." "So you came here," Katherine surmised. "To hide." Gabriel shook his head. "Not to hide, to live. There's a difference." He looked at her directly. "I'm not running from Elias Sutton. If he finds me, I'll deal with him, but I won't let him dictate how I live my life." Katherine understood then why he had helped her. "That's what I want too," she said softly. "To live on my terms, not Victor's." "Then that's what we'll make happen," Gabriel said, his conviction warming her more than the fire. Later, as Katherine prepared for bed, she heard Gabriel and Hank talking outside. Their voices were too low to make out the words, but there was an undercurrent of concern that made her uneasy. She placed her hand on her belly, feeling the baby move. "We'll be all right," she whispered, though uncertainty gnawed at her. How long could she impose on these men's kindness? What would happen when the baby came? And what if Victor's men found them? Morning brought rain, a steady drizzle that shrouded the valley in mist. Katherine woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of quiet conversation. She dressed quickly in her rumpled traveling clothes, wishing she had her carpet bag with its spare garments. In the main room, Gabriel was alone preparing breakfast. "Hank's checking our perimeter," he explained. "Standard precaution." Katherine nodded, accepting the cup of coffee he offered. "Is there anything I can do to help?" Gabriel hesitated, then seemed to recognize her need to be useful. "You can help me with the biscuits if you'd like, though I should warn you my cooking has been known to scare off bears." Katherine laughed, and the tension that had been building in her chest eased somewhat. "I'm a fair cook," she admitted, "though I had staff in Philadelphia who handled most meals." "Well, we're short on staff here," Gabriel said with a smile. "Just us and the chickens, and they're unreliable employees at best." Working beside him in the small kitchen area felt surprisingly natural. Gabriel moved with the same efficiency he showed with his gun, but there was a gentleness to him, to the way he broke eggs carefully, the respectful way he spoke to her, never assuming her incapable because of her condition. Hank returned as they were finishing the biscuits, shaking water from his coat like a dog. "All clear," he reported. "Rain's washed away any tracks. Good day to stay inside." The 3 of them settled into an unexpected domesticity as the day progressed. Katherine found herself relaxing, despite their vigilance. Hank proved to be a skilled storyteller, regaling her with tales of his time with the Buffalo Soldiers and his adventures with Gabriel. For his part, Gabriel was quieter but attentive, his eyes often straying to the windows and door, ever watchful. In the afternoon, Gabriel disappeared into his room and returned with a bundle of fabric. "These belong to my sister," he explained, offering them to Katherine. "She lived with me for a while before she married and moved to Oregon. They might fit you better than what you're wearing." Katherine accepted the clothes gratefully. There were several simple dresses, a nightgown, and undergarments, all plain but clean and well made. "Your sister and I appear to be of similar build," she observed, though she wasn't carrying a child when she wore these. "Clara was tall like you," Gabriel said with a fond smile. "She'd be pleased to know her things are being put to good use." The dress Katherine chose was a soft blue cotton, roomier than her traveling clothes and far more comfortable. When she emerged from her room wearing it, she caught Gabriel looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite interpret. "It suits you," he said simply, then turned away, a slight flush visible on his tanned face. That evening, as rain continued to fall, Hank produced a worn deck of cards. "Ever played poker, Mrs. Zimmerman?" he asked with a mischievous glint in his eye. "Katherine, please," she corrected. "And yes, though I was never very good at it." "Perfect," Hank said cheerfully. "I need someone new to beat. Gabe here knows all my tells." They played for matchsticks rather than money, and Katherine surprised herself by winning several hands. The easy camaraderie between the two men extended to include her, and for brief stretches, she almost forgot the danger that had brought her to their cabin. As they were putting the cards away, the baby kicked hard enough that Katherine gasped, her hand flying to her side. "Are you all right?" Gabriel asked immediately, concern etching his features. Katherine nodded, smiling. "Just a very active child, would you?" She hesitated, then took a chance on the connection she felt growing between them. "Would you like to feel it?" Gabriel's eyes widened slightly, but after a moment's hesitation, he nodded. Katherine took his hand and placed it gently on the side of her belly where the baby was most active. They waited in silence until the child kicked again, and Gabriel's face transformed with wonder. "That's something," he said softly, his hand lingering a moment longer than necessary before he withdrew it. "Strong." "Like its mother," Hank observed, his knowing gaze moving between the two of them. That night, Katherine lay awake for a long time, listening to the rain on the roof and thinking about Gabriel Everett's hand on her belly, the warmth in his blue eyes, and the inexplicable sense of rightness she felt in his presence. It was too soon, she told herself firmly. Her husband had been dead only 3 months, and she barely knew this man. Yet there was something between them, a connection that seemed to transcend the short time they'd known each other. Katherine closed her eyes, trying to make sense of her confused feelings as sleep finally claimed her. The next morning dawned clear and bright. Katherine woke to birdsong and the smell of pine, feeling more rested than she had in weeks. She dressed in another of Clara's dresses, this one a warm brown that complemented her auburn hair, and went to join the men. The cabin was empty, but the door was open, revealing Gabriel chopping wood while Hank tended to the horses in the corral. Katherine paused in the doorway, watching Gabriel's rhythmic movements as he split logs, his shirt clinging to his broad shoulders with exertion. As if sensing her gaze, he looked up, lowering the axe. "Good morning," he called. "Sleep well, better than I have in months," Katherine admitted, stepping onto the porch. "It must be the mountain air." "Or the company," Gabriel suggested with a small smile that sent an unexpected flutter through her chest. Hank approached from the corral, wiping his hands on a rag. "Thought I might ride into town today," he announced. "See if there's any word about those men who were after Mrs. Zimmerman." Gabriel nodded, his expression turning serious. "Be careful, don't draw attention." "I know how to be invisible when I need to be," Hank replied dryly. "Learned that skill early on." After a quick breakfast, Hank saddled one of the horses and departed, promising to return by nightfall. Katherine found herself alone with Gabriel, suddenly conscious of the isolation of the cabin and the growing attraction she felt toward him. "I should earn my keep," she said briskly, gathering the breakfast dishes. "What needs doing around here?" Gabriel considered her for a moment. "You don't have to work for your safety, Katherine." "I know that," she replied, "but I want to be useful. I'm pregnant, not helpless." A slow smile spread across his face. "Fair enough. How are you with chickens?" The morning passed pleasantly as Katherine gathered eggs and helped Gabriel with small tasks around the cabin. He was careful never to let her strain herself, but he didn't coddle her either, which she appreciated. They worked well together, establishing an easy rhythm that required few words. By midday, the sun was high and warm. Gabriel suggested they walk down to the creek where it widened into a small pool. "Good place to cool off," he explained, "and I thought you might like to see more of the valley." The walk was short but beautiful, through a meadow dotted with wildflowers. Katherine breathed deeply, savoring the clean mountain air. "It's lovely here," she said as they reached the creek. "So peaceful." "That's why I chose it," Gabriel replied, guiding her to a smooth rock beside the pool. "After years of noise and fighting, I wanted quiet." Katherine sat, removing her boots to dangle her feet in the cool water. After a moment's hesitation, Gabriel joined her, rolling up his pant legs. "You ever get lonely?" she asked, watching a trout dart beneath the surface. Gabriel considered the question. "Sometimes," he admitted. "Hank's good company, but he has his own life. He comes and goes." He glanced at her. "I had plans for this place, a real ranch, maybe a family someday, but life has a way of changing your plans." "Yes, it does," Katherine agreed, thinking of how different her life had become in just a few months. "When I married Charles, I thought I knew what my future held. Now—" She placed a hand on her belly. "Now everything is uncertain." They sat in companionable silence for a while, feet in the cool water, the sun warm on their shoulders. Katherine found herself studying Gabriel's profile again, appreciating the quiet strength he exuded. "Tell me about your husband," Gabriel said suddenly. The request surprised Katherine. Charles was. She searched for the right words. He was respected, powerful. "Our marriage was arranged by my parents when his first wife died. They were impressed by his wealth and standing." She paused. "He was 20 years my senior." Gabriel's eyebrows rose slightly, but he said nothing. "It wasn't a love match," Katherine continued, finding it surprisingly easy to confide in him. "Charles wanted an heir and a hostess for his social functions. I was expected to be grateful for the opportunity." She laughed without humor. "My parents certainly were. Were you happy?" Gabriel asked gently. Katherine considered the question. "I was comfortable," she said finally. "Charles wasn't cruel, just distant. We lived separate lives under the same roof. When I discovered I was with child, he seemed pleased, but only because it fulfilled his expectations." "And now?" Gabriel's blue eyes held hers. "Now I want more," Katherine admitted. "For myself and for my child. I want us to be truly happy, not just comfortable." Gabriel nodded, understanding in his gaze. "You deserve that," he said simply. They walked back to the cabin in thoughtful silence, each contemplating the unexpected confidences they had shared. As they neared the clearing, Gabriel suddenly stiffened, his hand moving to the revolver at his hip. "What is it?" Katherine whispered, fear clutching at her heart. Gabriel put a finger to his lips, his eyes scanning the tree line. "Something's not right," he murmured. "Stay behind me." They approached the cabin cautiously. Everything looked as they had left it, but Gabriel's instincts were screaming a warning. He guided Katherine to the side of the building, keeping his body between her and any potential threat. A twig snapped nearby, and Gabriel drew his gun in one fluid motion. "Show yourself," he called, his voice hard. A figure emerged from behind the barn, a man Katherine had never seen before, tall and lean with graying hair and cold eyes. He held a rifle pointed at Gabriel. "Everett," the man said, his voice carrying across the yard. "Been a long time." Gabriel's expression remained impassive, but Katherine felt him tense. "Sutton," he acknowledged. "You're trespassing on my property." Elias Sutton smiled, the expression never reaching his eyes. "Seems like I'm not the only one looking for you these days." "Met some interesting fellows in town, asking about a woman matching your companion's description. Pregnant, pretty, running from the law. They're offering good money for information." Catherine's heart sank. Victor's men had found them or would soon. "She's not running from the law," Gabriel replied evenly. "And neither am I, so state your business and be on your way." Sutton's smile widened. "My business has always been the same, Everett. You killed my brother. I'm here to settle that debt." "Your brother was robbing a bank and shot a child," Gabriel said, his voice hardening. "He chose his end." "And now I'm choosing yours," Sutton replied, raising the rifle. "Question is, does the lady die with you, or do I collect the bounty on her after?" Gabriel moved faster than Katherine could follow, pushing her toward the shelter of a woodpile and firing in one motion. Sutton ducked behind the barn, his own shot going wide. "Run for the trees," Gabriel ordered, firing again to keep Sutton pinned down, but Katherine couldn't leave him. Instead, she scrambled along the side of the cabin toward the door, intent on retrieving the shotgun she'd seen mounted above the fireplace. As she reached for the door handle, it swung open violently, knocking her backward. A man stood in the doorway, one of the three who had cornered her at the depot. His surprise at seeing her lasted only a second before he lunged, grabbing for her arm. Katherine screamed, twisting away. The man's fingers caught in her dress, tearing the fabric as she broke free. She stumbled backward, nearly losing her balance. A shot rang out and the man in the doorway jerked, a look of surprise crossing his face before he crumpled to the ground. Katherine turned to see Gabriel, his gun still raised, his face a mask of cold fury. "Inside now," he shouted, firing again toward the barn where Sutton was still concealed. Katherine didn't hesitate this time, darting past the fallen man and into the cabin. She grabbed the shotgun, checking that it was loaded as Gabriel had shown her the day before. Through the window, she could see movement at the tree line, the other two men from the depot emerging with guns drawn. Gabriel backed toward the cabin, still firing at Sutton. Katherine positioned herself at the window, raised the shotgun, and fired at the men approaching from the trees. The blast was deafening in the confined space, and the recoil nearly knocked her off her feet, but she saw one of the men dive for cover. Gabriel made it to the door, slamming it shut behind him and barring it with a heavy wooden beam. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, quickly scanning her from head to toe. "No," Katherine assured him, though her heart was racing so fast she felt lightheaded. "But we're surrounded." Gabriel nodded grimly, moving to the other window to assess the situation. "4 against 2, he murmured. "I've had worse odds." "Where's Hank?" Katherine asked, reloading the shotgun with shells from the box Gabriel indicated. "Don't know," Gabriel replied tersely. "Could be they caught him on the way to town, or he might be on his way back." He glanced at her. "Either way, we can't count on help." A voice called from outside. "Everett, send the woman out and maybe we can talk about letting you live." "That'll be Victor's man," Katherine said, recognizing the voice of the leader from the depot. Gabriel's expression was grim. "Don't think talking is what they have in mind." He checked his revolver, counting the remaining bullets. "We need to hold them off until dark. We'll have a better chance of slipping away then." Katherine nodded, trying to quell the fear threatening to overwhelm her. The baby kicked frantically within her, sensing her distress. She placed a calming hand on her belly, taking deep breaths. A shot shattered the window near Gabriel, sending glass flying. He ducked, returning fire. "Stay low," he instructed. The next hours were the longest of Katherine's life. The men outside kept up a steady barrage, gradually moving closer to the cabin. Gabriel remained calm, conserving ammunition and taking careful shots when opportunities presented themselves. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the valley, Katherine noticed Gabriel wincing as he moved between windows. "You're hurt," she said, spotting a dark stain spreading on his shirt. Gabriel glanced down as if surprised. It's nothing. Piece of glass caught me when the window broke. But Katherine could see it was more than that. Let me look, she insisted, moving toward him. Another shot rang out, this one punching through the wooden door. Gabriel pushed Katherine down, covering her body with his own as splinters flew. They lay pressed together on the rough cabin floor, Gabriel's breathing harsh in her ear. "We can't stay here," he murmured. "They'll rush the cabin soon." Katherine nodded against his chest, feeling his heartbeat strong and steady despite their dire situation. "What do we do?" Gabriel pulled back slightly, looking into her eyes. "There's a cellar trapdoor under the rug by the fireplace. Leads to a tunnel that comes out near the creek. Hank and I built it when I first settled here, precaution against exactly this kind of situation." Hope surged in Katherine's chest. "We can escape that way." "You can," Gabriel corrected, his expression resolute. "I'll keep them busy, give you time to get clear." "No," Katherine protested immediately. "I won't leave you to face them alone." Gabriel's hand came up to cup her cheek, the gesture startlingly tender amidst the violence surrounding them. "Katherine, you're carrying a child. Your life matters more than mine right now." The simple conviction in his voice moved her deeply. "Both our lives matter," she insisted. "We go together or not at all." For a long moment, Gabriel stared at her, something unspoken passing between them. Finally, he nodded. "Together then, but we need a distraction." As if in answer to his words, a shot rang out from the direction of the ridge, different from the weapons that had been firing at them. One of the men outside cried out in pain. "Hank," Gabriel said, relief evident in his voice. More shots followed, and they could hear confused shouting as their attackers tried to locate the new threat. Gabriel seized the moment, pulling back the rug to reveal a trapdoor. "Now," he said, helping Katherine to her feet. "Quick and quiet." The cellar below was small and earthen, with a low tunnel leading away from the cabin. Gabriel lit a small lantern, passing it to Katherine before closing the trapdoor behind them. In the dim light, Katherine could see that his injury was worse than he'd admitted. Blood had soaked through his shirt at the shoulder. "You need a doctor," she whispered. "What I need is to get you to safety," Gabriel replied, guiding her toward the tunnel entrance. "This way. It's narrow, but it'll take us to a hollowed-out log near the creek. From there, we can make for the horse pasture. With luck, Sutton and his new friends will be too busy with Hank to notice." The tunnel was cramped and smelled of damp earth. Katherine had to crouch, one hand supporting her belly, the other holding the lantern. Gabriel followed close behind, his breathing becoming more labored as they progressed. "Tell me about your sister," Katherine said suddenly, wanting to keep him talking, to keep him conscious. "Clara." Gabriel sounded surprised by the question. "She's stubborn, smart, married a blacksmith from Oregon who worships the ground she walks on." Pride colored his voice. "They have 2 little ones now, boy and a girl." "You must miss them," Katherine observed, grateful for the distraction from their desperate situation. "Every day," Gabriel admitted, "but they're building a good life. That's what matters." The tunnel seemed endless, but finally Katherine felt a change in the air, fresher, cooler. The passage widened, and they emerged into a hollow log cleverly concealed by brush. Beyond, she could hear the burbling of the creek. Gabriel paused, listening intently. In the distance, shots were still being fired, though less frequently now. "Hank's drawing them off," he said. "We need to move while we have the chance." They made their way cautiously through the growing darkness toward the pasture where Gabriel kept several horses. Katherine could see that Gabriel was struggling now, his face pale in the moonlight, one hand pressed to his wounded shoulder. "Just a little further," she encouraged, supporting him as best she could. They reached the pasture fence and Gabriel whistled softly. A large chestnut gelding trotted over, nickering quietly in recognition. "Rusty," Gabriel explained, stroking the horse's nose. "Steadiest mount I have." With effort, he helped Katherine onto the horse's bare back, then pulled himself up behind her, his movements stiff with pain. They rode slowly at first, keeping to the shadows at the edge of the valley, then faster as they reached the cover of the forest. "Where are we going?" Katherine asked, acutely aware of Gabriel's weakening hold around her waist. "There's an old trapper's cabin about 5 miles from here," he replied, his voice tight with pain. "Hank will look for us there if he gets away." "When he gets away," Katherine corrected firmly. "Hank strikes me as a survivor." Gabriel's chuckle was warm against her ear. "That he is." They rode for what seemed like hours, the terrain growing steeper and more rugged. Katherine could feel Gabriel's strength fading, his body sagging against hers. Finally, they reached a small clearing where a tiny cabin stood, nearly invisible among the trees. "Made it," Gabriel murmured as they dismounted. Katherine helped him inside, where a single room contained a narrow cot, a small table with 2 chairs, and a rudimentary fireplace. Gabriel sank onto the cot, his face ashen. "I need to look at your wound," Katherine said, lighting the oil lamp she found on the table. Gabriel didn't argue, which worried her more than the blood staining his shirt. She helped him remove the garment, revealing a deep gash across his shoulder and upper arm. Looking closer, she realized with relief that it wasn't a bullet wound but rather a deep cut from either glass or a knife. "You're lucky," she told him, examining the injury. "It missed anything vital, but you've lost a lot of blood. I need to clean and bandage this." Gabriel gestured weakly toward a shelf above the fireplace. "Medical supplies up there. Hank insists on keeping all our outposts stocked." Katherine found bandages, a bottle of whiskey, and a small tin of salve. She worked quickly, cleaning the wound with water from a canteen and the whiskey, which made Gabriel hiss in pain despite his stoic demeanor. "Sorry," she murmured, applying the salve before binding the shoulder tightly with bandages. "This will have to do until we can get you proper medical attention." Gabriel caught her hand as she finished, his fingers wrapping gently around hers. "Thank you," he said simply, his blue eyes holding hers in the lamplight. Katherine felt a surge of emotion so strong it nearly overwhelmed her. This man had risked everything for her, a stranger, without hesitation or expectation of reward. In the short time she had known him, he had shown her more kindness, more respect than Charles had in their entire marriage. "Rest now," she said softly, squeezing his hand. "I'll keep watch." Gabriel's eyes were already closing, exhaustion and blood loss taking their toll. "Wake me in a few hours," he murmured. "Not safe for you to be up all night in your condition." Katherine smiled, touched by his continued concern for her welfare even in his weakened state. "I'll be fine," she assured him. "Sleep." As Gabriel drifted into unconsciousness, Katherine moved to the cabin's single window, peering out at the moonlit forest. She had no idea if they'd been followed, if Hank was alive, or what tomorrow would bring. Yet somehow, with Gabriel beside her, she felt more secure than she had in months. She placed a hand on her belly, feeling the baby move. "We're going to be all right," she whispered, and for the first time she truly believed it. The night passed slowly, each sound in the forest making Katherine tense with apprehension. She checked on Gabriel periodically, relieved to find his breathing steady and his skin no longer cold with shock. The wound didn't appear to be infected, though he would need proper medical attention soon. Dawn was just breaking when Katherine heard hoofbeats approaching. She grabbed Gabriel's revolver from where she'd placed it on the table, moving cautiously to the window. Relief flooded her when she recognized Hank, leading 2 saddled horses. She opened the door, keeping her voice low to avoid startling him. "Hank, we're here." Hank dismounted quickly, his face breaking into a rare, broad smile when he saw her. "Mrs. Zimmerman, thank the Lord." His expression sobered as he entered the cabin and saw Gabriel. "How bad?" "Deep cut across the shoulder," Katherine reported. "He's lost blood but seems stable." Hank examined the bandaged wound, nodding his approval at Katherine's handiwork. "You've done well. He's tough, he'll pull through." "What happened back at the cabin?" Katherine asked. Hank's expression darkened. "I came back from town and saw them surrounding the place. Managed to pick off one from the ridge, then draw the others away when you two escaped." He paused. "Elias Sutton won't be troubling Gabriel again. I made sure of that. And the others? Victor's men. One's dead, the one Gabriel shot at the cabin. The other two fled, but they'll be back with reinforcements once they regroup." Hank looked at her steadily. "We need to get you somewhere safer than this territory." Gabriel stirred on the cot, his eyes opening. "Hank," he said, voice rough with sleep and pain, "good to see you still breathing." "Likewise," Hank replied with a small smile. "Though you look like you've been dragged behind a horse." "Feels like it too," Gabriel admitted, attempting to sit up. Katherine moved quickly to help him, supporting his uninjured side. Hank explained the situation, concluding, "We can't go back to the cabin. Too exposed now that they know its location." Gabriel nodded, his expression grim. "We need to get Katherine to San Francisco as planned. Those men won't stop coming." "We need to get you to a doctor first," Katherine insisted. "That wound—" "There's a settlement about 20 miles west of here," Hank interrupted. "Has a doctor who doesn't ask questions. We can rest there, then make plans for the longer journey." The decision made, they prepared to leave. Katherine helped Gabriel dress in a clean shirt Hank had brought, trying not to notice the play of muscles across his chest and back, or the way her pulse quickened when their hands touched. Once mounted, with Gabriel on Rusty and Katherine riding with Hank, they set off through the forest. The day was clear and cool, the mountain air fragrant with pine. Under different circumstances, Katherine might have enjoyed the beauty surrounding them. "What did you learn in town?" Gabriel asked Hank as they rode, "before everything went to hell." "Enough," Hank replied grimly. "Those men have a telegraph with Mrs. Zimmerman's description in every settlement within 100 miles. The story they're spreading is that she's unstable, that she killed her husband and fled with family money. There's a substantial reward for her return." Katherine gasped. "That's absurd." "Charles died of heart failure. There were doctors present. Doctors can be bribed," Gabriel observed quietly. "Especially if Victor Zimmerman is as wealthy and desperate as you say." The implications were clear. Katherine wasn't just running from men seeking to control her child. She was now a fugitive, accused of a crime she didn't commit. "This changes things," Gabriel continued after a moment. "We can't just take you to your friend in San Francisco. If there are wanted posters with your face on them, you'll never make it through checkpoints on the regular routes." "What do we do?" Katherine asked, fear clutching at her heart again. Gabriel and Hank exchanged glances. "We take the long way around," Hank said finally, "through Apache territory." "It's risky," Gabriel acknowledged, "but I know some of the tribal leaders from my time scouting for the army. If we travel respectfully and stay off the main routes, we have a better chance than trying to bluff our way through settlements crawling with bounty hunters." Katherine nodded, trusting their judgment. "How long will it take?" 2 weeks, maybe more, Gabriel estimated. "Depending on your condition and how well this heals." He gestured to his shoulder. 2 more weeks of running, of danger. Katherine's hand went protectively to her belly. The baby would be due in 4 months, enough time to reach San Francisco if all went well. But a lot could happen in 2 weeks on the trail. As if reading her thoughts, Gabriel guided Rusty closer to her and Hank. "We'll get you there safely, Katherine," he promised, his blue eyes intense. "Both of you." The conviction in his voice steadied her. "I know you will," she replied softly. They reached the settlement by nightfall, a small cluster of buildings surrounding a trading post. The doctor, a gruff older man named Sullivan, examined Gabriel's wound with practiced efficiency. "Nasty cut, but clean," he pronounced. "Whoever bandaged it knew what they were doing. I'll stitch it properly, give you something for infection." He glanced at Katherine. "Wife, friend," Gabriel corrected, though something in his tone made Katherine's cheeks warm. Dr. Sullivan raised an eyebrow but didn't comment further. He stitched Gabriel's wound, provided fresh bandages and medicine, and offered them the use of a small room behind his surgery for the night. "One bed," he noted, "but I reckon the lady can take it. You two look like you've slept rough before." With that, he left them to settle in. The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a chair. Hank insisted on taking first watch outside, leaving Gabriel and Katherine alone. An awkward silence fell between them, different from the comfortable quiet they had shared before. Something had changed during their desperate escape and night in the trapper's cabin. A boundary crossed, though neither had acknowledged it. "You should take the bed," Gabriel said finally, lowering himself carefully onto the chair. "You need proper rest." Katherine regarded him thoughtfully. "So do you. That wound won't heal if you spend the night in a chair. I've slept in worse places." "I'm sure you have," Katherine replied with a small smile, "but you don't have to tonight." She hesitated, then added softly, "The bed is wide enough for both of us if we're careful." "I trust you, Gabriel." Gabriel's eyes darkened, and for a moment Katherine thought he might refuse. Then he nodded once, a gesture of acceptance that made her heart beat faster. They prepared for sleep awkwardly, each acutely aware of the other's presence. Katherine removed her boots and outer clothing but remained dressed in her shift, while Gabriel stripped to his undershirt and trousers. The bed creaked as they both lay down, a careful space maintained between them. Katherine could feel the warmth radiating from Gabriel's body, smell the clean scent of soap and pine that seemed to cling to him. "Good night, Katherine," Gabriel murmured, his voice low in the darkness. "Good night," she whispered back, certain she would never fall asleep with him so close. Yet exhaustion claimed her quickly, and she drifted off, comforted by his steady presence beside her. She woke sometime in the night to find herself curled against Gabriel's uninjured side, her head resting on his chest, his arm around her shoulders. For a moment, she remained perfectly still, listening to the strong, steady beat of his heart beneath her ear. She should move away, maintain the proper distance between them. But the warmth and security of his embrace was too precious to relinquish. Instead, she closed her eyes again, allowing herself this stolen comfort in the midst of so much uncertainty. Gabriel's arm tightened slightly around her, and she realized he was awake too. Neither spoke, acknowledging with their silence what words couldn't yet express. Morning came too soon, bringing with it the reality of their situation and the journey ahead. They left the settlement before dawn, supplied with food and medicines from Dr. Sullivan, who asked no questions but wished them Godspeed with a knowing look. The next days fell into a rhythm of hard travel by day and vigilant rest by night. They avoided main trails and settlements, keeping to the wilderness where Katherine discovered a beauty she had never known in Philadelphia's manicured parks and gardens. Gabriel's strength returned gradually, his wound healing clean thanks to Katherine's care and Sullivan's medicine. On the fourth day, they crossed into what Hank identified as Apache territory. That night, as they made camp in a sheltered canyon, Gabriel explained their strategy. "We'll approach the nearest settlement tomorrow," he said, studying a rough map spread before them. I know their chief, Nako, from years back. He has no love for white men in general, but he respects those who come honestly and speak truth. Will he help us? Katherine asked. Gabriel's expression was thoughtful. If he believes our story, yes. The Apache have their own code of honor. They value courage and protecting family above all else. And if he doesn't believe us, Katherine pressed. Gabriel and Hank exchanged glances. Then we'll have to find another way, Gabriel said simply. That night, Katherine dreamed of Philadelphia, of her parents' grand house, of Charles in his study ignoring her as always, of Victor's cold smile across the dinner table. She woke with a start, momentarily disoriented by the star-filled sky above and the warm bedroll beneath her. Gabriel was on watch nearby, his profile silhouetted against the dying embers of their small fire. Without thinking, Katherine rose and went to join him, wrapping her blanket around her shoulders against the night chill. "Can't sleep?" he asked quietly as she settled beside him. "Bad dreams," Katherine admitted. "About the life I left behind," Gabriel nodded, understanding in his silence. After a moment he asked, "Do you regret leaving?" Katherine considered the question carefully. "No," she said finally. "I regret marrying Charles in the first place. I regret not having the courage to make my own choices sooner." She placed a hand on her belly. "But I don't regret this child or leaving Philadelphia to protect it. What will you do in San Francisco?" Gabriel's voice was carefully neutral, but something in his tone made Katherine look at him more closely. "Begin again," she said simply. "My friend Emily's husband has offered me work in his practice, keeping accounts, helping with patients. It's not glamorous, but it's honest work that will support us." Gabriel nodded, his gaze fixed on the darkness beyond their camp. "You'll do well there. San Francisco is a city of new beginnings." Katherine sensed there was something he wasn't saying. "What about you?" she asked gently. After we reached San Francisco, Gabriel was silent for so long that Katherine thought he might not answer. "I don't know," he admitted finally. "The cabin was home, but now—" "You could start again too," Katherine suggested, her heart beating faster at her own boldness. "In San Francisco or somewhere else." Gabriel turned to look at her then, his blue eyes reflecting the starlight. "Could I?" he asked softly, the question layered with meaning. Katherine met his gaze steadily. "Yes," she whispered. "I think you could." The moment stretched between them, full of unspoken possibilities. Then Hank stirred in his bedroll and the connection broke as Gabriel turned away. "You should get some rest," he said, his voice once again neutral. "Tomorrow will be challenging." Katherine returned to her bedroll, her mind racing with thoughts of what might have been said if Hank hadn't woken, of what might still be possible when they reached safety. The Apache settlement was located in a hidden valley, invisible until they were nearly upon it. Gabriel approached openly, his hands raised to show they came in peace. A group of warriors met them, stern-faced and cautious, their weapons ready. Gabriel spoke a few words in the Apache language, then switched to English. "I seek Nako," he said clearly. "Tell him Gabriel Everett has returned." One of the warriors studied him intently, then nodded and gestured for them to dismount and follow. Their horses were taken by young boys who appeared from between the dwellings, while Gabriel, Hank, and Katherine were led to a large structure at the center of the settlement. Inside, an older man sat beside a small fire, his face lined with age and wisdom. He looked up as they entered, his dark eyes sharp and assessing. "Nako," Gabriel greeted him respectfully. The chief nodded once. "Gabriel Everett," he replied in accented but clear English. "Many seasons have passed since you rode with our scouts against the Blue Coats." "Many seasons," Gabriel agreed, "but I have not forgotten your kindness or your wisdom." Nako's gaze moved to Katherine, taking in her pregnant state and the weariness evident in her face. "You bring a woman heavy with child into dangerous lands. This is not the act of a wise man." "It is the act of a desperate one," Gabriel replied honestly. "We seek safe passage through your territory. The woman is hunted by evil men who would harm her and take her child." Nako considered this. "Sit," he commanded. "Share food and tell your story. Then I will decide if you may pass through our lands." Over a simple meal of corn cakes and dried meat, Gabriel explained their situation, with Katherine adding details about Victor and his men. Hank remained silent but watchful, his presence a reassuring support. When they finished, Nako sat in thoughtful silence for several minutes. Finally, he spoke directly to Katherine. "You carry a warrior within you," he observed. "I can see it in how fiercely you protect the unborn one. This is good." He turned to Gabriel. "And you, Everett? You fight for this woman and her child though they are not your blood." "Why?" Gabriel met the chief's penetrating gaze. "Because it's right," he said simply, "and because—" He hesitated, glancing briefly at Katherine. "Because I care what happens to them." Nako smiled slightly. "Honesty. This is also good." He nodded decisively. "You may pass through our lands. I will provide guides to take you safely to the western boundary. From there, you can reach the white man's roads to the great water." Relief washed over Katherine. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "Do not thank me yet," Nako cautioned. "The journey is still dangerous. The men who hunt you are not the only threats in these lands." That night, they were given a small dwelling to share, a gesture of both hospitality and practicality, as it allowed the Apache to keep an eye on them. The single room contained sleeping mats and a small fire for warmth. "We're lucky," Gabriel observed as they settled in. "Nako is one of the few chiefs who still maintains peaceful relations with whites. Many others would have turned us away or worse." "He seems to respect you," Katherine noted. Gabriel nodded. "I rode with his people for a time after the war, before I became a marshal's deputy, learned their ways, their language. Nako's son was killed by soldiers during a misunderstanding. I helped prevent a war by bringing the responsible officer to justice." "You've lived quite a life," Katherine said softly, realizing how little she still knew about this man who had risked everything for her. Gabriel's smile was tinged with sadness. "Not always a good one, but I've tried to do right when it mattered." Later, as they prepared for sleep, Katherine found herself watching Gabriel as he checked his revolver and spoke quietly with Hank about their route. In the firelight, his features were strong and clean, his movements sure despite his healing wound. When he caught her looking, she didn't look away. "We should reach San Francisco in another week if the weather holds," he said, coming to sit beside her. "Your friends will be glad to see you." "Yes," Katherine agreed, though the prospect no longer filled her with the same relief it once had. The journey had changed her, or perhaps it had simply revealed what was already there, a strength she hadn't known she possessed, and feelings for Gabriel she couldn't deny. "Will you stay?" she asked suddenly. "In San Francisco, I mean, at least for a while." Gabriel's expression was unreadable in the flickering light. "Would you want me to?" Katherine took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "Yes," she said simply. "I would." Something shifted in Gabriel's eyes, a warmth, a possibility. But before he could respond, Hank returned from speaking with their Apache guides. "We leave at first light," he announced. "Best get some rest." The moment passed, but Katherine carried the memory of Gabriel's expression with her as she drifted to sleep, the hope she'd seen there, and the promise of words yet unspoken. They traveled for 4 more days through Apache territory, guided by 2 silent warriors who knew every hidden trail and water source. Katherine was growing increasingly uncomfortable as her pregnancy advanced, but she never complained. Each night, Gabriel tended to her with quiet concern, ensuring she ate well and rested as much as possible. On the 5th day, they reached the western boundary of Apache lands. Their guides pointed toward distant mountains. "Beyond those lies the path to the Great Water," one explained in broken English. "2 days' ride to the white man's road, then follow it west." Gabriel thanked them in their own language, offering gifts of tobacco and ammunition. The warriors accepted with dignified nods before melting back into the landscape as silently as they had appeared. "Now what?" Katherine asked as they watched the Apache depart. "Now we make for the mountains," Gabriel replied. "Once we reach the other side, we'll be in California territory. From there, it's a relatively straight path to San Francisco." They rode steadily through the day, the terrain gradually changing from desert to scattered pine forest as they gained elevation. By nightfall, they had reached the foothills of the mountains, making camp in a sheltered grove near a small spring. As Hank prepared their simple meal, Gabriel helped Katherine down from her horse, his hands lingering at her waist longer than necessary. The touch sent warmth spreading through her, a now familiar response to his nearness. "How are you feeling?" he asked, concern evident in his blue eyes. "Tired," Katherine admitted, "but well enough." She smiled ruefully. "Though I fear I'm slowing our progress." "We're making good time," Gabriel assured her. "Another week at most and you'll be safe in San Francisco." Katherine searched his face. "And will you be safe too?" Gabriel's expression softened. "I'm always careful, Katherine." "That's not what I asked," she persisted gently. Gabriel glanced toward Hank, who was deliberately focusing on the cooking pot, then back to Katherine. "Let's walk a bit," he suggested. "Stretch your legs before dinner." They moved a short distance from the camp, within sight but out of earshot. The evening was cool but pleasant, the setting sun painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. "You've come to mean a great deal to me, Katherine," Gabriel said finally, his voice low. "More than I expected, more than is probably wise." Katherine's heart quickened. "Wisdom has little to do with matters of the heart," she replied softly. Gabriel turned to face her fully, his expression earnest. "You're starting a new life. You need time to find your footing, to decide what you want for yourself and your child." "I know what I want," Katherine said with newfound confidence. "I want freedom from Victor's threats. I want my child to grow up safe and loved." She took a step closer to him. "And I want you in our lives, Gabriel, if that's something you might want too." Gabriel's hand came up to cup her cheek, his touch feather light. "It's all I've been thinking about since the moment I lifted you onto my saddle at that depot," he confessed. "But Katherine, your husband, was a man I respected but never loved," Katherine finished for him. "Our marriage was a business arrangement, nothing more, with you." She placed her hand over his where it rested against her face. "With you, I felt more in these few weeks than I did in years with Charles." The admission hung between them, honest and vulnerable. Gabriel's eyes darkened, and he leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished. Instead, Katherine closed the distance between them, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that was both gentle and certain. Gabriel's arms came around her, careful of her belly, holding her as if she were something infinitely precious. When they finally parted, his smile was like sunrise breaking across his face. "I never expected to find you," he murmured. Katherine returned his smile. "Sometimes the best things are unexpected." A discreet cough from the direction of their camp broke the moment. Hank stood with his back politely turned, announcing that supper was ready. Gabriel and Katherine returned hand in hand, their newfound understanding apparent in the way they moved together. Hank raised an eyebrow but said nothing, merely passing them each a plate with a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. That night, as they prepared for sleep, Gabriel spread his bedroll next to Catherine's without comment. When she lay down, he settled beside her, his arm a protective barrier against the night chill and any dangers that might come. "Rest," he whispered, pressing a kiss to her temple. "I'll watch over you." Catherine curled into his warmth, feeling truly safe for the first time in months. "We watch over each other," she corrected softly. The mountains proved more challenging than anticipated. A late spring storm brought rain and mud, slowing their progress and forcing them to seek shelter for a full day in a shallow cave. The close quarters should have been uncomfortable, but Catherine found herself treasuring the unexpected time with Gabriel and Hank. Hank proved to be a masterful storyteller, regaling them with tales of his adventures before and after meeting Gabriel. In turn, Gabriel shared stories of his childhood in Tennessee, of his sister Clara and their life before the war tore everything apart. Catherine spoke of her own childhood, the daughter of a successful merchant who valued appearances above all else, a mother who had taught her that a woman's role was to be decorative and obedient. "No wonder you ran," Gabriel observed, sitting close beside her as rain drummed at the cave entrance. "You were never meant for that kind of cage," Catherine smiled, leaning against his shoulder. "I didn't know that until recently. I always thought there was something wrong with me for wanting more." "Nothing wrong with wanting a real life," Hank commented from where he was cleaning his rifle. "Real love, too, if you can find it." He gave them a meaningful look that made Catherine blush and Gabriel clear his throat. "Did you ever marry Hank?" Catherine asked, partly to divert attention. Hank's expression grew distant. "Once. Her name was Esther. She died in childbirth during the war while I was away fighting." His voice held old pain, long carried. "Never found another woman who made me feel the way she did." "I'm sorry," Catherine said softly. Hank nodded acknowledgement. "Life goes on, you find other purposes." He looked between them. "Other family." The simple statement warmed Catherine deeply. In these two men, she had found not only protectors but family of a kind she had never known, chosen family, bound by loyalty and affection rather than blood or obligation. When the storm finally passed, they continued their journey, crossing the mountains and descending into California territory. The landscape changed dramatically greener, more lush than the desert they had left behind. They reached the main road 2 days later, where stage coaches and wagons traveled regularly between settlements. Here, they faced a new challenge: how to avoid recognition if Victor's men had indeed spread word of Catherine's supposed crimes this far west. "We need to disguise you somewhat," Gabriel decided after they observed a stage coach stop from a safe distance. "And we should travel separately once we reach the larger settlements, less conspicuous that way." Catherine agreed reluctantly. The prospect of being separated from Gabriel, even briefly, filled her with anxiety, but she understood the logic of his plan. In the next small town, Hank purchased a simple wedding band for Catherine, along with a dark bonnet that shadowed her face. They constructed a story she was Mrs. Gabriel Everett, traveling to meet her husband's family in San Francisco after being married in the East. "Will anyone believe I'm your wife?" Catherine asked as they practiced their story, her hand resting on her swollen belly. Gabriel's smile was tender as he placed his hand over hers. "I think it's the most believable part of our tale," he said softly. The charade worked well in the smaller settlements they passed through. Gabriel and Catherine stayed in boarding houses as husband and wife, while Hank took rooms elsewhere, keeping watch for any sign of pursuit. They traveled by day, blending with other westward-bound settlers and merchants. 3 days from San Francisco, in a town large enough to have a telegraph office, their luck finally ran out. Gabriel had gone to purchase train tickets for the final leg of their journey, leaving Katherine resting at her respectable hotel. Hank was posted in the saloon across the street, watching for trouble. Neither man noticed the telegraph operator studying Katherine closely as she waited for Gabriel in the hotel lobby, nor did they see him slip away to speak to the local sheriff. Katherine was dozing in a chair when a shadow fell across her. She looked up, expecting Gabriel, but found instead a stern-faced man wearing a sheriff's badge. "Mrs. Zimmerman?" he asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Katherine's blood ran cold. "I believe you're mistaken," she replied, struggling to keep her voice steady. "My name is Everett, Mrs. Gabriel Everett." The sheriff's expression remained impassive. "I have a telegraph from Philadelphia identifying you as Katherine Zimmerman, wanted for questioning in the death of your husband, Charles Zimmerman." He produced a folded paper from his pocket. "There's a substantial reward for your safe return." Katherine's hand went protectively to her belly. "I've done nothing wrong," she said, her voice stronger now. "My husband died of a heart condition. His brother is attempting to steal my child and my inheritance." The sheriff hesitated, something like doubt crossing his features, but his duty was clear. "I'm sorry, madam, but I need to detain you until this can be sorted out. Please come with me." Katherine glanced desperately toward the hotel entrance, hoping to see Gabriel returning. The street outside remained empty of any familiar face. "May I at least leave a message for my husband?" she asked, clinging to their cover story. The sheriff nodded curtly. "You can tell the desk clerk on our way out." Katherine wrote quickly, her hands shaking. "G. Sheriff has taken me. Victor's doing. Be careful." K. She handed the note to the young clerk, who promised to deliver it when Mr. Everett returned. Then, with as much dignity as she could muster, Katherine allowed the sheriff to escort her from the hotel. The jail was small but clean, with 2 cells at the back of the sheriff's office. Katherine was placed in one, provided with a chair and blanket, and left alone while the sheriff returned to his desk to compose a response to the telegraph. Through the barred window of her cell, Katherine could see the sun beginning to set. Gabriel would have returned to the hotel by now, found her note. What would he do? Storm the jail? That would only confirm the sheriff's suspicions and possibly get Gabriel arrested or worse. The baby kicked as if sensing her distress. Katherine rubbed her belly soothingly. "It's all right," she whispered. "Gabriel will find a way." Night fell and the sheriff lit lamps in the office. He brought Katherine a simple meal and a cup of water, his manner not unkind but professional. "Sheriff," Katherine said as he turned to leave, "may I ask when you expect a response to your telegraph?" The man considered her question. "Probably tomorrow. I've asked for confirmation of the charges and instructions for your transport back east. And if I told you those charges are false? That I'm being persecuted by my brother-in-law who wants control of my unborn child's inheritance." The sheriff's expression softened slightly. "That would be for a judge to decide, madam. Not me." Katherine nodded, understanding. This man was simply doing his job as he saw it. "Thank you for your honesty," she said quietly. The sheriff left, locking the door behind him. Through the window in her cell, Katherine could see him cross the street to the saloon, presumably for his own supper. She was alone in the jail. Or so she thought, until a soft tapping came at the barred window of her cell. Katherine rose quickly, moving to the window. Outside in the gathering darkness she could make out Hank's face. "Mrs. Zimmerman," he whispered. "Are you all right?" "Yes," she assured him. "But they're planning to send me back east once they receive confirmation of Victor's charges." Hank nodded grimly. "Gabriel's working on a plan. Sheriff's going to be occupied at the saloon for at least an hour. Seems he has a standing poker game on Tuesday nights. What can I do?" Katherine asked. "Be ready," Hank replied. "When we come for you, things will happen fast." He disappeared into the darkness, leaving Katherine both hopeful and anxious. She returned to her chair, hands clasped in her lap, waiting. Nearly an hour passed before she heard a commotion in the street outside. Shouts about a fire, the sound of running feet. Through her cell window, Katherine could see flames leaping from a shed behind the livery stable across from the jail. The door to the sheriff's office burst open, and a deputy Katherine hadn't seen before rushed in. "Fire at the livery," he shouted. "Sheriff needs help evacuating the horses." He grabbed a set of keys from a hook on the wall, barely glancing at Katherine as he rushed back out, leaving the outer door ajar in his haste. Moments later, Gabriel slipped into the office, dressed in clothes Katherine didn't recognize the rough garb of a stable hand. His face was smudged with soot, but his smile was bright as he unlocked her cell. "Ready to leave?" he asked, helping her to her feet. "You started a fire," Katherine asked incredulously. "Small one, controlled," Gabriel assured her. "Hank's making sure no one gets hurt. But it'll keep the sheriff and his deputy busy long enough for us to get clear of town." He led her quickly through the office and out a back door, where 3 horses waited in the shadows. Hank appeared moments later, his expression satisfied. "Everyone's safe," he reported. "Fire's under control, but they'll be sorting out the mess for another hour at least." Gabriel helped Katherine onto one of the horses, then mounted his own. "We ride hard until we're clear of the county," he instructed. "Then make for the coast road. If we travel through the night, we can reach San Francisco by tomorrow evening." Katherine nodded, gathering the reins. Despite the danger, despite the uncertainty ahead, she felt a surge of exhilaration. This was living making her own choices, fighting for her freedom, loving a man who respected her courage. They rode through the night, stopping only briefly to rest the horses and allow Katherine to stretch her increasingly uncomfortable body. By dawn, they had left the town far behind, taking less traveled paths that wound through rolling hills and coastal forests. The air grew more humid as they neared the coast, carrying the tang of salt. By mid-afternoon, they crested a hill and saw it in the distance San Francisco, its buildings sprawling around the Great Bay, ships dotting the harbor. "We made it," Katherine breathed, a weight lifting from her shoulders. Gabriel reached across to take her hand. "Almost. We still need to get you safely to your friend's home." They approached the city cautiously as evening fell, avoiding the main gates and checkpoints. Gabriel knew the area well enough to guide them through less monitored routes, and by nightfall, they had reached the address. Katherine had memorized a handsome house on a quiet street in one of the city's better neighborhoods. Katherine's friend Emily opened the door herself, her expression changing from polite inquiry to shock and joy when she recognized the visitor. "Katherine, oh my God!" She embraced Katherine tightly, then pulled back to examine her. "We've been so worried. Your letter said you were coming weeks ago and then nothing." Her gaze moved to Gabriel and Hank, uncertainty replacing her joy. "These are my friends," Katherine explained quickly. "Gabriel Everett and Hank Wilson. They saved my life, Emily, multiple times." Emily's husband appeared behind her, Dr. James Foster, a kind-faced man with spectacles and graying hair. He took in the situation quickly and ushered them all inside, away from potentially curious neighbors. Over hot tea and a hastily assembled meal, Katherine explained everything: Victor's plots, their journey west, the charges against her, and the sheriff who had detained her. "Outrageous," Dr. Foster declared when she finished. "To accuse you of murdering your own husband. The man must be truly desperate." "He is," Katherine confirmed, "and dangerous. As long as he believes I'm carrying the heir to the Zimmerman fortune, he won't stop looking for me." A somber silence fell over the group as they considered the implications. "You'll stay here, of course," Emily said finally. "We have plenty of room, and James has contacts in the legal profession who can help clear your name." "And after the baby is born?" Katherine asked quietly. Dr. Foster leaned forward. "We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. For now, you need rest and proper care. From the look of you, that child could come earlier than you think." Gabriel, who had been largely silent during the conversation, spoke up. "The doctor's right. You're safe here, Katherine. This is where you need to be." Something in his tone made Katherine look at him sharply. "And you, where will you be?" Gabriel exchanged glances with Hank. "There's still the matter of those charges against you. As long as they stand, you're not truly free." "What are you saying?" Katherine asked, though she already knew. "I'm saying that someone needs to deal with Victor Zimmerman," Gabriel replied, his voice hard. "Make him understand that his campaign against you is over." "No," Katherine said firmly. "It's too dangerous. Victor has money, influence, hired guns. You can't face that alone." "He won't be alone," Hank interjected quietly. Dr. Foster cleared his throat. "If I may suggest an alternative, I have contacts in Philadelphia, respected physicians who attended Charles Zimmerman in his final days. With their testimony and proper legal representation, we could fight these false charges properly through the courts." "That could take months," Gabriel pointed out. "Years even. And meanwhile, Katherine lives in fear, unable to use her real name or move freely." "It's still better than you confronting Victor directly," Katherine insisted. "I couldn't bear it if something happened to you because of me." Gabriel's expression softened as he looked at her. "Nothing's going to happen to me," he assured her. "But I need to do this, Katherine. For you and for your child." Emily, who had been watching the exchange with growing understanding, spoke up gently. "Perhaps this discussion can wait until morning. Katherine needs rest, and I'm sure Mr. Everett and Mr. Wilson do as well after your journey." The wisdom of this suggestion was acknowledged by all. Emily showed them to guest rooms, Katherine to one, Gabriel and Hank to another down the hall. As Katherine prepared for her first night in a proper bed since leaving Philadelphia, a soft knock came at her door. Gabriel stood in the hallway, his expression troubled. "May I come in for a moment?" Katherine nodded, stepping back to allow him entry. In the lamplight, he looked tired but determined, the lines of his face etched with concern. "I don't want to leave you," he said without preamble. "But I can't let this threat hang over your head indefinitely. You deserve peace, Katherine, a chance to raise your child without looking over your shoulder." Katherine moved closer to him, placing her hand on his chest. "And you think confronting Victor will provide that?" "I think it's the fastest way, yes." Gabriel covered her hand with his own. "I know men like him. They only understand one language: force or the threat of it." "And after?" Katherine asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "If you succeed in making Victor back down, what then?" Gabriel's free hand came up to cradle her face. "Then I come back to you, if that's still what you want." "It's all I want," Katherine admitted, leaning into his touch. "You, me, this child. A family, Gabriel, a real one." Gabriel kissed her then, a kiss filled with promise and longing and the bittersweet knowledge of their impending separation. When they parted, he rested his forehead against hers. "I'll come back to you," he vowed, "no matter what it takes." In the morning, Katherine woke to find Gabriel and Hank already gone, having left before dawn. A letter waited for her, delivered to Emily with instructions to give it to Katherine when she woke. "I'm sorry to leave without saying goodbye properly," Gabriel had written. "It seemed easier this way for both of us. Hank and I are taking the morning train east. We'll handle this situation with Victor as quickly and peacefully as possible. then return to you. Until then, know that you carry my heart with you as surely as you carry your child. Stay safe, stay strong. All my love, Gabriel. Katherine pressed the letter to her chest, tears flowing freely. Emily found her this way and simply held her, offering the comfort of friendship as Katherine's emotions overwhelmed her. He'll come back, Emily assured her. A man doesn't look at a woman the way he looks at you and then disappear forever. Katherine nodded, wanting desperately to believe her friend was right. The days that followed took on a strange, suspended quality. Katherine settled into the Fosters' household, helping Emily with household tasks and assisting Dr. Foster in his practice when her energy allowed. Her pregnancy advanced, the baby growing more active as the days passed. Dr. Foster declared her healthy but advised rest and careful monitoring. First babies often come early, he explained, and you've been through considerable strain. A week passed with no word from Gabriel or Hank. Then, too, Katherine tried not to worry, reminding herself of the distance they had to travel and the complexity of the situation they faced. In the third week, Katherine began experiencing what Dr. Foster identified as practice contractions, her body preparing for labor. Still some weeks to go, he assured her, but we should prepare. That same evening, a telegram arrived for Katherine. Her hands trembled as she opened it, hoping desperately for news from Gabriel. The message was brief. Charges dropped, legal documentation following by post. Victor no longer a threat, returning soon as possible, G&H. Relief washed over Katherine in a dizzying wave. She read the telegram to Emily and Dr. Foster, who shared her joy and relief. How do you think they managed it? Emily wondered. Katherine shook her head. I don't know, but I trust Gabriel. If he says Victor is no longer a threat, then it's true. 2 more weeks passed. Katherine's time grew near, her body heavy and uncomfortable as she waited for both the baby and news of Gabriel's return. Dr. Foster arranged for a midwife to stay in the house, anticipating the birth could come any day. On a warm June evening, as Katherine sat on the Fosters' veranda watching the sunset over the bay, she felt the first real contraction, a tightening across her abdomen more intense than the practice ones she had been experiencing. She breathed through it as Dr. Foster had taught her, then waited. When another came 15 minutes later, she knew. It was time. She called for Emily, who immediately summoned her husband and the midwife. They helped Katherine to her room where preparations were swiftly made. As the contractions intensified and grew closer together, Katherine found herself wishing desperately for Gabriel's presence, for the strength and comfort he had provided throughout their journey. Hours passed, the labor progressing steadily. Katherine alternated between walking the room when she could and resting between contractions. Emily stayed by her side, offering encouragement and support, while Dr. Foster and the midwife monitored mother and child. "You're doing beautifully," Emily assured her as dawn approached. "Not much longer now," Katherine nodded, too focused on her body's work to speak. The contractions were coming rapidly now, the pressure building as the baby moved lower. Dr. Foster confirmed she was nearly ready to push. As the sun rose over San Francisco, painting the room in golden light, Katherine heard a commotion downstairs, voices, footsteps hurrying up the stairs. Then the door burst open, and Gabriel stood there, disheveled from travel, his eyes finding hers immediately. "Katherine," he breathed, crossing to her side in 3 strides. "You're here," she managed between contractions, reaching for his hand. "You came back." "I promised I would," Gabriel replied, clasping her hand in his. He looked to Dr. Foster. "May I stay?" The doctor nodded, recognizing the bond between them. "She needs you." With Gabriel by her side, Katherine found new strength. When Dr. Foster instructed her to push, she bore down with all her might, Gabriel's encouragement in her ear, his hand steady in hers. "I can see the head, Doctor," Foster announced. "One more big push, Katherine." Katherine gathered her remaining strength, focusing everything on bringing her child into the world. With a final, powerful effort, she felt the baby slip free, and then the most beautiful sound she had ever heard filled the room, the lusty cry of her newborn. "A girl," Dr. Foster announced, placing the infant on Katherine's chest. "A healthy, perfect girl." Katherine gazed down at her daughter, overwhelmed by the love that surged through her. Tiny hands, a shock of dark hair, a face red with the effort of her first cries. "She's beautiful," Katherine whispered. Gabriel leaned close, his eyes filled with wonder as he looked at the child. "She is," he agreed, his voice thick with emotion. "Just like her mother." As the midwife helped clean and wrap the baby and Dr. Foster tended to Katherine, Gabriel remained by her side, a steady presence full of quiet joy. "What happened with Victor?" Katherine asked when she was finally settled in a clean bed, her daughter sleeping peacefully in a cradle nearby. Gabriel sat beside her, his hand still holding hers. "It's a long story," he said. "The short version is that we found evidence of his gambling debts and his plans to have you committed. We also located your husband's personal physician, who confirmed Charles died of natural causes and had a history of heart trouble. And Victor accepted this. Just like that." Gabriel's smile held a hint of steel. "He did after Hank and I explained the alternatives in terms he couldn't misunderstand. The charges have been dropped officially. You're free, Katherine. Your name is clear." Katherine squeezed his hand. "Thank you for everything." Gabriel brought her hand to his lips. "There's more," he said. "While we were in Philadelphia, I spoke with your family's lawyer. Charles left you more than you knew: property, investments. You and your daughter will never want for anything." The news was surprising, but secondary to the greater gift. Gabriel had given her freedom from fear, the chance to live on her terms. "Where's Hank?" Katherine asked, suddenly realizing the absence of their friend. "Downstairs, giving us privacy," Gabriel replied with a smile. "Though he's eager to meet the newest member of our strange little family when you're ready, our family." The words warmed Katherine deeply. "Send him up," she said. "And then—" she hesitated, gathering her courage. "And then I'd like to speak with you alone." Hank's visit was brief but heartfelt. The tough former soldier grew misty-eyed as Katherine placed the baby girl in his arms. "She's something special," he declared. "Going to be as strong and stubborn as both her parents, I reckon." When he had gone, Gabriel returned to Katherine's side, perching carefully on the edge of the bed. "You wanted to speak with me," he prompted gently. Katherine nodded, suddenly nervous despite everything they had been through together. "I never properly thanked you," she began. "For saving us that day at the depot, for everything since." "You don't need to thank me," Gabriel said softly. "Yes, I do," Katherine insisted. "You changed my life, Gabriel. You showed me what it means to be truly brave, to fight for what matters." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "And you showed me what love can be: not a transaction or a duty, but a choice, a gift freely given." Gabriel's expression softened. "Katherine," she placed a finger on his lips. "Let me finish. I love you, Gabriel Everett. I think I have since that moment you lifted me onto your saddle and fired back at those men. And if you'll have us, me and my daughter, I want to build a life with you." Gabriel captured her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "I was going to ask you the same thing," he admitted, reaching into his pocket. He produced a simple gold ring. "I'm not a wealthy man, Katherine. I can't offer you the life you had in Philadelphia, but I can promise to love you and your daughter with everything I am, for as long as I live." Tears of joy filled Katherine's eyes. "That's all I want," she whispered. "That's everything." Gabriel slipped the ring onto her finger, then leaned forward to seal their promise with a kiss gentle, reverent, full of hope for their future together. From the cradle came a small sound, their daughter awakening, demanding attention in the way of all newborns. They broke apart with soft laughter, and Gabriel rose to bring the infant to Katherine. "What will you call her?" he asked as Katherine cradled the child. Katherine looked from her daughter to the man she loved. "Clara," she said decisively, "after your sister, Clara Elizabeth Everett." She glanced up at him. "If that's all right with you." Gabriel's smile was radiant. "It's perfect," he said, sitting beside them and wrapping his arm around Katherine's shoulders. "She's perfect. You're perfect." "Not perfect," Katherine corrected with a smile, "but ours." 1 month later, in a small ceremony in the Foster's garden, Katherine Zimmerman became Gabriel Everett. Clara, dressed in a christening gown Emily had made, slept peacefully in Hank's arms as he stood witness to the union. Dr. Foster performed the ceremony, his words simple but profound as he spoke of love found in unexpected places, of courage in the face of adversity, and of the family created not by blood but by choice and devotion. "What now?" Katherine asked as they stood together afterward, receiving congratulations from the small gathering of friends. Gabriel's arm tightened around her waist. "Now we go home." "Home?" Katherine looked up at him questioningly. "I bought land near the coast," Gabriel explained. "North of here, where the redwoods meet the sea. Room for a house, horses, maybe even a small ranch someday." He smiled down at her. "Room for Clara to run and play. Room for more children if you want them." Katherine's heart swelled with joy at the vision he painted. "It sounds perfect," she said softly. Hank approached, Clara still sleeping contentedly in his arms. "Sorry to interrupt, but this little lady is getting heavy," he said with a grin. Katherine took her daughter, marveling as always at the tiny perfection of her features, Charles' dark hair, but everyone agreed, Katherine's eyes and determined chin. "Will you come with us, Hank?" she asked. "To our new home." Hank exchanged glances with Gabriel, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "For a while," Hank agreed. "Help you folks get settled, then I reckon I might explore a bit, see what else this coast has to offer." "You'll always have a place with us," Gabriel told him firmly. "Always." As the celebration continued around them, Katherine stood with her daughter in her arms and her husband by her side, filled with gratitude for the strange twist of fate that had brought them together. From desperate danger at a remote depot to this moment of perfect happiness, a journey she could never have imagined when she fled Philadelphia, Gabriel bent to press a kiss to her temple. "Happy," he murmured. Katherine leaned into his embrace, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her shoulder. "Completely," she replied. "Are you?" Gabriel's smile was answer enough, but he spoke the words anyway, words that echoed in Katherine's heart like a promise fulfilled. "I've never been happier in my life." As the sun began to set over San Francisco Bay, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, Gabriel Everett looked toward the northern horizon, where their future waited. The road ahead would have its challenges, she knew, but they would face them together, she and Gabriel and Clara, and whatever children might join their family in the years to come. A family built on choice and courage, on respect and devotion, on love freely given and gratefully received. From that first desperate moment at Silver Creek Depot to this perfect sunset by the sea, a journey of danger and discovery, of loss and finding, of fear transformed into the greatest love Katherine had ever known. As Gabriel's arm tightened around her waist and Clara stirred against her chest, Katherine knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be, home at last, in the heart of the family she had chosen, and the love she had earned.